Okay, Wakanda Forever, right? I love this movie a lot, and I'm gonna try and break it down. Stuff I like the most, and then I'll just sprinkle like critiques throughout. But I'm gonna talk first about the stuff I like and the stuff that stuck out because I watched this movie twice now. To be honest, two and a half, twice officially. um, so first off, here's the thing that stuck out to this movie. Stuck out in this movie to me the most on my first watch. Namor and Talokan or Atlantis, whatever you want to call it. Um, love everything about that depiction, that the indigenous, um, like Latin American, South American, Central American, Mayan culture, Aztec. I love that stuff. I love what that Ryan Cooglar. I'll talk about this a bit more. Um, with some other characters later on. Ryan Coogler feels like he grew up like me, reading certain mythologies. Because by the way, this is a spoiler review, full spoiler review. When the Talokans are introduced and they're doing a fucking siren song to hypnotize people to jump overboard, that shit was fire. I wish they kind of heightened the horror element of that a bit more. Maybe it's just me becoming more self conscious of that scene on my second watch or thinking about it after my first watch. But I feel like that scene could have been a lot more scarier. As much as I loved it, I just love that vibe. Imagine if they didn't even show because they showed their head popping out of the water to look at the targets before they start doing stuff. Imagine if they just started the siren song and people were just walking out and see that what the heck is going on. I would have loved that because fear of the unknown is real, and if you disorientate the viewers as well as the people in that scene that way, that would have been chef's kiss. And then obviously on top of that, it's the motivation of Namor, the motivation of Talokan. It felt so real, and it made me realize that there was so much for me. For some reason the first movie just doesn't connect to me, and I've realized after a lot of videos over the years it's because one of the many reasons is because I feel like the writing isn't that good, but it's the best thing about that movie to a fault, unfortunately. um and one of those things is the as opposed to this movie, hot take, the messaging about the revolutionary messaging, the anti-colonial messaging didn't resonate with me in the first movie through Killmonger. It felt like it was a Disney quota to make him a bit disrespectful to women, to black women, act this way, act that way, be very selfish in his character, be very like he seemed like a bad guy in spite of some of the rhetoric that he was saying. That I was agreeing with some of it. And he also, of course, wanted to be an imperialist, right? He didn't want to free people necessarily. He wanted to liberate oppressed people that looked like him probably, but he also wanted to rule over a world empire and be the new colonizer, right? As opposed to Namor, who also technically wants to take over the surface world and invade the surface world. But this felt like a healthier equivalent to Killmonger. His his first and last line in this movie says everything about this guy. When he comes out the water, people don't realize this. He's saying multiple things in the first couple of lines he's saying without saying it. He goes, oh wow, look at this place. The air is so breathable. My mother told me of a place where the land is protected, where the people are protected, and where you never have to leave where you come from. Hot take. Even before they reinforced that idea through Namor's origin with his mother and his people later on in the movie, that dialogue that Namor says about, oh, my mother told me of a place you never have to leave. People are protected. You never have to leave where you come from. That was the movie finding the middle ground between Ryan Cooglar not trying to upset too many conservative people or too many white liberals, too many black liberals. Let's be clear. Let's be real. Because people get uncomfortable, white or otherwise, with the whole anti-colonial messages. Oh, you're just blaming white people, all that stuff. It was finding the middle ground between that and let's go, let's kill these colonizers. Because let's be real, every time they mention that, they make it explicitly clear we're talking about European and American colonizers, and that's going to trigger some people. So I feel like the subtext, ironically, in my opinion, through Namor's character, through Talo Khan, when he says stuff like, "Oh, my mother told me of a place where everyone's protected," where that was the meta commentary that I'm sure the culture had about Black Panther, about that kind of pang of jealousy and envy, almost to a degree. But also, you can argue possibly what the rest of the world, even outside of the black community, even outside of the diaspora, felt about Black Panther. That was that anti-colonial messaging in that. But it was also telling us a lot about his character without people realizing. It was telling us that clearly Namor has always known about Wakanda, the same way they established in the first movie. They've had war dogs. They've been watching the different worlds in Wakanda. Sorry, they've had war dogs, and for years they've been watching in the background, and we haven't been seeing them. Namor has known about Wakanda. His mother told him of a place where the land is protected and people never have to leave where they come from. They're not listening, they're not deep in it. That was a fire line, but it was also so tragic because he also heard the sorrow in his voice. He misses his mother. He wished the best for his people, for her. And that sadness, because he knows that the place she associated with home, as we found out, was a place associated with, again, oppressors, people who they showed indigenous people, indigenous Latin American people being enslaved by conquistadors. This is fire to me again. Fire imagery about anti-colonialism. On my second watch, yes, I do agree with people about the fact that it doesn't feel as explicit as the first movie, I'm sure, with Killmonger's character. For me personally, it did, but that's because I just don't rock with the first movie as much. So the stuff in this movie, personally, it felt a bit more well written and just spoke to me. Personally, I mentioned his first and last line. His last line, again, to me on the first watch, I love it. He goes, you don't understand when the Namora comes up to him, his second in command, I think, or third, I'm not sure, and says, how could you submit to them? You don't understand. These are the most powerful people on the surface. The surface world will come for them eventually, and they'll turn to us. I love that because that's Ryan Cooglar reinforcing, no. Throughout this movie, Namor has been negotiating with Shuri. Every time he's interacted with her, he didn't immediately go to fight. Him coming to Wakanda and seeing Ramonda and Shuri, even though, yeah, he trespassed. He was trying to negotiate. He understood, no, we don't just attack these people because they've exposed possibly our secret as to the world through exposing their own secrets, right? We don't just, later on in the movie, when Shuri's in Talokan and he's talking to her, again, he's talking to her, listen, we have more in common, let's team up. Throughout this movie, and I understand people don't like the idea of brown and black. Me too, on the second watch, the subtext does hit a bit heavier, like it doesn't look good. But yeah, Namor is just, yeah, he's always trying to be more measured than I think a lot of people give him credit for. And a lot of people would give this movie credit for. And it says a lot about where Ryan Coogler's headspace was as far as the storytelling, as far as the character study behind this character and behind some of the themes messaging. the theme's messaging, the movie's messaging, thematic messaging, and I love that about this movie. But to go on from there, Talokan, right? Talokan has the same issue that Wakanda has in the sense that they only show one specific area, and you want to see more, right? And hopefully they can do a movie that's just a Namor movie where it's a conflict that takes place entirely within Talokan and shows that. Oh yeah, by the way, I forgot. I love the origin of his name. And El Nino Sinamora or something like that. I know Nino means child, and then what's it? And Namor is meant to mean no love, I believe. The boy or the child with no love. It's a fire name. That's a fire way. By the way, also I need to add this. Namor was what, 8 years old? He ages slowly, so someone pointed this out to me. He could have been like on some Baby Yoda. He's secretly 50 at the moment. This brother is 8 years old and running things. As soon as he saw these conquistadors, like, what the heck is I killed him. Looked at his man and like, I killed him. That shit was flame. That shit was. He's 8 years old. He's already killing the monsters. Fire. Oh my god, I love Namor in this movie. Tenoch Huerta is fire. I need to see more stuff. I heard he's in Narcos Mexico, which I gave up watching a little bit into it, but I've heard good things. But yeah, I may have to see his stuff because clearly, yeah, he's putting in the work. And outside of Namor specifically, sorry. Yeah, I like that idea, Talokan. I wish we saw more of it. It's the same issue with Wakanda, seeing mostly the capital city. Outside of that, like the Jabari land area in the mountains, but even then, we don't see too much either. So I'm looking forward to a future where we see more stuff specifically about the Wakanda, its geography, its different tribal lands and cultures. Same thing with Talokan. Hopefully, they can get really good Latin American filmmakers with that knowledge of the ancient history. Oh, I'm so sorry. With that knowledge of the ancient history to do a film about that, because I want to see that. As far as Talokan, one last thing. I love the character. His name is Atuma, I believe. The one who was going head up with Okoye. Let me tell you something. Ryan Cooglar, he understands the importance of boss fights. I mentioned this earlier. It feels like Ryan Cooglar was like me growing up to an extent. That he grew up watching certain films, videos, Dragon Ball Z, certain cartoons, right? Last Airbender. I don't know. I think he's in his mid-30s, so he would have been a bit older. But either way, you can tell he understands through watching martial arts films and probably reading comic books as well himself. I didn't read comic books when I was younger, a tiny bit. More manga. He understands the importance of a boss fight. Every time Okoye, that bridge fight scene, that's the Ryan Coogler I want to see. Not that terrible CG BS in the first movie. This is the Ryan Coogler. That actually was sexy. The ship fight scene with the Talokans, Canians. I don't know how you say their name. I apologize. Sexiness. There's a lot of sexiness in the movie that looks like a mix of practical and well done CG, by the way. Great visuals in this movie. No wonkiness at the last movie where they pretended that, oh, it's because of Avengers Infinity War. That's why you want to concentrate on that CG and forget this Black Panther CG. No, it's because you didn't believe a movie with black cast was worth spending that much time on, even though it made $1 billion after the fact. So, fuck you very much, Marvel Studios. Go suck your mom. Yeah, I mean that shit. I love that bridge fight scene. That Atuma guy, Even like later on when they fought again, and then they did a callback of a warrior, come here. It's like, oh, you've learned our mother tongue. You can greet our ancestors. And they went. These characters is like Ryan Cooglar, like I said, watched Dragon Ball Z. It's like, what if people were doing this, but they looked like us? Which is why, to me, at first, I didn't take offense at the idea of these two powerful nations that we associate with indigenous Mexican culture and Black African indigenous people, right? Fighting each other. Even though I understand upon a second viewing and thinking about it after my first viewing, why the subtext of black and brown people fighting is uncomfortable. With all due respect to Marvel, they could have ended stronger, in my opinion, in the third act, as far as that unity is concerned. There's a scene from like X-Men 2. I tweeted about this. I wish they showed. I don't know if anyone remembers this scene from X-Men 2, but there's a scene where a bunch of the X-Men, and I think the Brotherhood of Mutants as well, I forget, show up in the Oval Office at the White House. Just as a, it's more, is to me, I saw it as a low-key threat, but that's not the point. However that scene actually is, imagine there was like a vague similar equivalent, because they made it clear in this movie, the CIA and American interests want to invade Wakanda. We've seen French soldiers or mercenaries try to invade some of the outpost centers already. Clearly, these brothers are gearing up. Maybe it may culminate in a third movie where Doctor Doom gets in the mix, but I just don't buy that. Unless they go all the way comic booky, I don't buy that he'll be the villain, because then you get into Latveria and why they have similarities to Tenoch and Wakanda. They want disassociation with the outside world. You know what? They may make them the villains, because I'm thinking about what other Eastern European nation is having conflict currently, couple of them, because they want self-determination, because they want to be separated. Ukraine and Russia, right? I understand it's not that simple, and feel free to educate me. But I'm just thinking of the history of like stuff, the Prague Spring, various communist regimes falling in Eastern Europe. There's so much to mine there that if they did decide to make them the villains, and more, and not villains in a Namor sense, where it's nuanced, where he feels like an antagonist first, but more like an outright villain, I would be disappointed in Ryan Cooglar, assuming Doctor Doom showed up in the third film, because you can do a lot there. And as far as colonial history and oppression in that way, there's discrimination by oppressive white empires against other white people, especially in the history of Eastern Europe. Joseph Stalin killed more of his people than Hitler did. This is a known statistical fact. The history of, well, we know with obviously white Jewish people, but white Slavic people, right? There's so much to mine there that could be really good for when they introduce Doctor Doom, assuming he goes against Wakanda in another movie. I don't want them to make Latveria just I don't think Ryan Coogler will do this, but I feel like because of the Disney, there's certain things he's done in this movie, like having Martin Freeman's character so much in it, or the stuff he does or doesn't do with Killmonger in the first movie, revealing Wakanda to the world, that you can tell they're made for everyone who isn't the black audience, everyone who isn't from a certain minority group that has a certain relationship with the worlds that makes it, or with certain entities and empires that would make it really uncomfortable, the idea that T'Challa would reveal Wakanda's true nature to the UN. I can think of a couple friends that don't see that as a fulfilled arc, right? But I understand why Ryan has to do some shit like that, because he can't just make a movie where he says colonizers as casually. It's like She-Hulk fans who think sexual harassment is making good men look bad. No, it makes bad men look like bad men. There are men out there who sexually assault women every day. It's happening probably as I speak, right? but people don't see it that way. They see it as it's a personal insult to them because this show is specifically orientated for the female's perspective with a comedic twist that makes certain things over the top. I've seen the black equivalent of that, and people, I'm sure there's people that will complain regardless. But I can tell that Martin Freeman's character, including in this movie, I don't mind him. I like him in the film a bit more than the last movie. A lot more. Yeah, the last movie he uses drones to kill people who are in a sovereign civil conflict in the third act. They're literally practicing neocolonialism on screen. It's disrespectful. This movie, it feels like he's helping the Wakandans. He's just has a passive secondary role. But unless you're gonna make him U.S. ambassador, I'm just so tired of seeing his face. But I don't mind it. That's the thing. I don't have any inherent issue. It's just that, I'm good, you know. Yeah. So those are my issues. Like, I wish they ended stronger. I did like that a lot of the issues in this movie around grief, around black women, the way they're presented in their emotional trauma and their turmoil. I heard people say that Letitia Ashuri, like, we couldn't really see her go through her emotional state. What happened to her brother? But I think that's actually more a reflection of her than we think, because so much tragedy has happened. So we don't see it on her face. She's clearly struggling. Like, the most depressed people will go out of their way to visibly hide that shit. If you know them well, you can tell they're hurting deeply, but they'll go out of their way to hide, especially black women who, by default, sadly, including by, I hate to say this in many cases, people who fit my profile, right, can be easily dismissed if they show visceral emotion, visceral trauma is perceived as, you're being a bit feisty, you're being a bit this, you're being, relax, you know. I'm sure all women to varying degrees can relate to that, and I'm sure in Wakanda is a bit more nuanced because they don't have that type of mentality there that I've seen. But you can still tell that Shuri's going through it in this movie, various moments. And I like that a lot. I like that she's a lot more serious. There's no jokes. The few jokes that I disliked in the first movie were from her or M'Baku. I actually really like the jokes from M'Baku. I love M'Baku in this movie. He's an uncle, and I say that with pride, right? He almost becomes like an Obi-Wan figure to Shuri, but he still puts in the work when he can. It's just that he took a mad L to Namor. Again, it's arguably a nitpick. I want them to retcon at some point that the Jabari, in the comics, the Jabari tribe have their own equivalent of the heart-shaped herb. They drink from, I understand how this could be like a racist caricature if they do it poorly, or if they even attempt to do it at all, but I'd like to see it. In their tribe, they have something where they perform a ritual where they drink from the blood of a sacred white gorilla that they sacrifice. You know, like, you always hear them say, "Oh, glory to Hanuman." That's the god, the gorilla gods that they worship in the Jabari tribe. I would like to see some stuff like that. Like, shit gets so bad, or there's like, we need multiple superpowered characters in Wakanda at certain points. At a certain point, and then M'Baku is, forced. You know what? I have to do this, and maybe it causes a rift because as you've seen, jokingly him chopping my inhaler. Sorry, M'Baku chopping the carrot in this film. They meant what they said. They're vegetarians, right? So both for, I'm sure, religious reasons and just for personal integrity reasons, it will mark a shift in his character if they do retcon that, and he does have to take it. and I like to see how that affects his tribe. How people still decide to follow him. Like, look, Doctor Doom's invading. Like, I had to do something. I can't let Shuri take him. She can't take him alone. No, even with powers, is not. Doctor Doom is different. He moves different. You need superpowered M'Baku and Okoye and Nakia and a bunch of other brothers backing her up, right, with smarts and brawn. So I can see it, and to me, he's evolved enough to where I feel like that power wouldn't corrupt him, in my personal opinion. Do you know who? Speaking of Dragon Ball Z and Ryan Cooglar, me grafting that type of mentality onto the characters in this movie and the first movie, and Baku reminds me of later on in his character arc, Piccolo. He gives me Piccolo vibes. I thought in the first movie, because of his issues with T'Challa, that they're going for more like a Vegeta type. Again, later on in this arc, where it's more like a bitter, a reluctant friendship. Well, not reluctant. I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't know the words, but someone who has like a kind of uneasy alliance, but they still have differences over leadership. I thought it was gonna go there, and it did sort of. And he still has issues in this movie that he voices, understandably, about what to do with Namor. But he feels more measured, and I love it. Like, he's jokey when he wants to be, but he's still serious. He still cares about Wakanda and his people, just like a lot of people in this movie do. Okoye, you see the hurt on her face when she has to give up her position. If anything, I wish they went a bit harder in that. And Michaela Cole, for example, and her relationship with Io and Adora and her position, again, I understand they're trying to appeal to the Chinese market. They can't be explicit, but I wish they went harder in that sense and showing that, oh, she is in love with Io. But I get it. It's the Disney quote, right? Disney will pretend like they love minorities, women, but they love money first. They love dollars, yen, euros, pounds, or whatever color that currency is. That's what they love first before they love any other color or pretend to. And I get why they have to do it. Do you know what? Is this a conversation that any queer fans you can have? Feel free to have in the comment section again, because I feel like the term queerbaiting exists for a reason, right? It's patronizing. I understand it's not our place, but Michaela Cole I watched a clip of her. One of the premiers say it well that I'm Ghanaian, she's also Ghanaian, among other places in Africa, right? There's some iffy laws and legislation for LGBTQ people out there, so this stuff is important, and again, it feels like Marvel. I'm gonna do a video about that in the future. Like, I want to see more genre bending, sci-fi, horror, different types of stories with black characters and other minority characters. But I feel like the Hollywood framework is just not the place for it. Like, Ryan Coogler needs to start his own studio on some Tyler Perry shit, but without the effery of Tyler Perry. Like, own your own means of production, or at some point just stop making movies for Hollywood and do your own thing. Do you know what I mean? I just, nah. It's just no, thank you. Yeah, I'm tired. Like, there's so many things in this movie that I understand why they did it, but it still feels like we're beholden to people who don't want to be too uncomfortable, even though they say they like learning about our history, learning about pre-colonial Africa, learning about Pan-Africanism. But you don't really, because again, if Martin Freeman, if you take him out of this movie, people would react to this movie the same way, I guarantee, the same way a lot of good men reacted to She-Hulk. And She-Hulk had legitimate problems, but it's not that deep. Captain Marvel is boring as heck, but it's not that deep. It's not. I don't like WandaVision. It's still not that deep. Do you know what I mean? I can feel how limiting this medium is by Disney, the so-called progressive company in a so-called progressive place like Hollywood. Where so that's my true issue with this movie, the Disney quota. Apart from that, I loved it. Um, Tell me your thoughts. Oh, Angela Bassett was amazing. Yeah, but tell me your thoughts down below. Tell me what you thought. This was a long review, but it had to be done, and I loved it. Um, yeah, and I wish this movie ended by what's her face, Elaine from Seinfeld, who was the head of the CIA. I wish they pulled up to her office at the end of X-Men 2 and threatened her, you better not come to Wakanda or Talokan. Both Talakanians and Wakandans in that room talking to her, you better not come for us or we will kill you all. I would have loved that scene. They should have done that. That would have been fire. That unity, the black and brown, oh, shizzle. Shit would have been fire. Those are my thoughts. Tell me yours down below. Like, share, subscribe for more. Other than that, guys, signing off. Salute.